We started last week talking about grace. And grace, we said, was amazing for a lot of different reasons. But the main reason that grace is amazing is because we don't deserve it. We don't deserve grace. I remember, I can't remember how long ago it was, but we was driving back in my old college town. I think all of us were together. And outside of my college town, there's a smaller town that's a speed trap. And they'll give you a ticket in a heartbeat. A lot like Nakoma Park out in Eastern County if you live in Oklahoma. But I was going through there, going on up north, and I was speeding way over the speed limit. And of course, the people in the car with me, I won't say who it was, but they always say, slow down. You're driving too fast. Slow down. You're driving too fast. And sure enough, I'm not paying attention. I'm going on about my business, and there was the lights. Pull over, walk up to the car, good evening, good morning, whatever it was. Now I was speeding. Don't forget that fact. I was speeding. Dead wrong. And so he takes my driver's license, goes to the car, comes back. Mr. Moore, y'all have a wonderful night. Slow down. And so we going about our business. And Tammy said, I told you that if you keep speeding, you're going to get pulled. Okay, whatever, Tammy, but I didn't get a ticket, so no harm, no foul. But I was wrong. What I experienced was grace. I should have got a ticket for however much they decided to write it for because I was speeding. And there's been countless times in my life that I have been wrong. But whatever the particular consequence was in that situation, I experienced grace and didn't have to face the consequences of my actions. So I want you to think about your life. Think about a time in your life that you know you were wrong, that you know you were guilty, that you know you should have got in trouble, that you know you should have went to jail, that you know you should have got fired, that you know you should have faced some consequences that may not have been the best of consequences, but you didn't, and you experienced grace. To some degree, all of us have experienced grace. Maybe not getting stopped by the police, maybe not whatever it is, but we've all experienced that kind of grace, but we didn't deserve to experience it, but we did anyway. All of us can say that. One of the biggest people in the Bible that come to mind when I think about God's grace is David. And if we read about David in the second Samuel, chapter 11, I won't read it all, but I want to summarize the story because it drives home the point of being dead wrong, being guilty, being caught in the act, but experiencing God's grace. So David, the Bible starts out saying that David, it was in the spring when kings should be at war. So he was supposed to be on the battlefield, but he was back at the palace. And he says that, the Bible says that when David was back at the palace, he was outside at night, and there was somebody up on the rooftop taking a bath. He saw Bathsheba, and he said, woo, look a yonder. First of all, he was somewhere he shouldn't have been. Every time that I found myself somewhere I shouldn't have been, pretty much asking for trouble. That's a lesson for my young people. Every time you find yourself somewhere you know you shouldn't be, you can pretty much guarantee it's going to be trouble. So David should have been on the battlefield, but he was back at the palace chilling. I don't feel like fighting this year. I'm David. I ain't got to go. And so he sees this lady up on the roof, but that wasn't enough. He didn't stop there. He said, man, who is that woman? And somebody said, that's Bathsheba. That's the Hittite. You're right. That's his wife. He said, really? I don't care. Go get her. But he didn't stop there. He said, "Now don't go get her." And then, you know, he saw her and they did what they did, and she come up pregnant. And instead of saying, "Okay, I done messed up. I have made a tragic mistake. I have sinned. I need to confess. I need to try to make this right." David didn't stop there. He said, "You know what? Send word to the battlefield. Send her husband home. Get him and send him home, and tell him to go down to his house." So Uriah comes home, and David asks, "Hey, how's the battle going?" He said, "Man, you know, it's rough, it's tough. We trying to make this thing work. You know, why come you ain't out there, David?" "Well, you know, I want to chill this year. I didn't want to fight." So going home, take a couple days off, get some rest, and then going back to the battlefield. So Uriah says, "You know what? I don't feel right going home while all of my kinsmen is out in the battlefield fighting and living in tents and huts." So he stays right there on the stoop of the palace. That didn't work. He didn't stop there. "Come on in the palace, Uriah. Let's hang out with me for a couple of days." And he feeds him some good food and gets him drunk and try to send him home, but he still don't go home. He goes sleep with the help in the palace. That didn't work. David's still, "Okay, I messed up. I'm in this thing deep." Instead of using some spiritual wisdom and saying, "I need to confess and try to get this right," no, he didn't stop. He said, "Okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Hey, Uriah, come here." And he gives Uriah his own death warrant. He gave him a letter to take back to the battlefield. He takes the letter back to the battlefield. The captain of the guard reads it, and here's what the letter said: "Take him and put him in the most heated part of the battle, and then pull the men back. Leave him by himself." Now, mind you, David started just by looking. Just by being somewhere he shouldn't have been. So he went from lusting to lying to fornication, stole a man's wife, and the ultimate act of treason, he has Uriah killed. Uriah corrected me, the teacher over there. Uriah killed. Drew the men back. Uriah's dead. He lets Bathsheba mourn the whatever time that they usually mourn when you lose a husband. And as soon as the mourning was over, he brings her to the palace. And he marries her, and they have this baby that was conceived all because he was somewhere doing something he shouldn't have done. Now you would think that God would say nothing good about David after an act like that. You would think that God would say, "What kind of joker have I created that would do some foolishness like this and just act like it's the normal thing to do?" Because that's not normal kind of behavior for a king. David was the king. But instead, in Acts chapter 13, verse 22, look at what it says about David. Look at what God says about David. This is the apostles talking and teaching. After God took him away, which was Saul, the original king, God made David the king. Watch this part. This is what God said about him. "I have found David, son of Jesse. He is the kind of man I want. He will do all that I want him to do." The original Greek translation says, "He's a man after my own heart." So this man who was after God's own heart, that God placed in the kingdom as the king of his people, does an act that we would say today, "Oh my God, and you call yourself a king?" But God says, "This is a man after my heart." So if there was anybody who experienced God's favor, it had to be David. If anybody could say, I know what it's like to understand what it means to act like I'm a heathen, but still experience God's favor as king. He put me in the position as king. I messed up. I fell down. He didn't take away his love. He used me to write all these different psalms, and I acted like I didn't know who he was. If anybody could tell you about God's unmerited favor, it would be David. Because he acted like he was not nowhere close to being having God's own heart, being a man after God's own heart, being a man who wanted the same things that God wanted. It's easy for us to look at David because we all know what God said about him. And I said, but Lord, what about me? I'm not David. I didn't write any of the Psalms. People don't read my writings and go, oh my God, look how wonderful his heart was. Look what God said about him. People read my writings and say, man, this guy can't spell. So what about us? Let's look at one more verse and then we'll be done for the day. Look at John chapter 1, verse 16. Look at what we get to experience. For out of this is the Amplified Bible. I wanted to read it for a purpose because it helps us understand what these words mean. For out of the fullness, the superabundance of his grace and truth, we all receive grace upon grace, spiritual blessing upon spiritual blessing, favor upon favor, and gift heaped upon gift. That was David's story. We know he experienced God's favor. We know he experienced God's grace. But what about the everyday average joker that's just trying to be the best person, the best Christian that they can be? You and me. This is what the Bible tells us. This is 1 John when it's talking about who Jesus was and the word became flesh, yada, yada, and it goes on. Verse 16, it says, for out of his fullness, the superabundance of his grace and truth. We experience grace not from our supply, because we have none. We experience grace out of God's unlimited supply. I like it because it says his superabundance of grace. Out of his unlimited supply. It never runs out. It's never ending. In other words, if he took a cup and started pouring, we ain't got enough cups to hold all he can pour. Think about it this way. If you took a bucket to the ocean and got you a scoop, is the ocean going to dry up? If you drove 1,700 2015 dump trucks and filled them up with ocean water, is it still going to be enough to go back and fill them up again? Yes, because we can't exhaust it. But God's unlimited supply surpasses that. We can never exhaust the grace that God has for us. I don't have enough sin and guilt to exhaust God's grace. If we took our stuff collectively and poured it on the altar, we don't have enough bad stuff that we have done, that we will do in our life, that God's unlimited supply of grace can't handle, because it's unlimited. It's an endless supply. It's endless. And I can't wrap it's like eternity. I think about eternity and I get overwhelmed because just to think about just being existing forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. That's the way God's grace, his unlimited, it's just forever and ever and ever. The one thing that I love about God more than anything else is that no matter how much I fall short, no matter how much I mess up, because I am his grace for me will never run dry. So the Bible teaches us that we have a super abundance of grace. It never runs out. I had this teacher, her name was Miss Littlejohn in the kindergarten. I never will forget it. And I love Miss Littlejohn, and I would always try real hard in her class because when we would do something right, she had those, when I was young, those blow pops with the gum in the middle, they were big. At least because I was little, maybe they looked real big to me. And boy, I would, that's the only time in my life I really tried hard in school because I wanted those blow pops. And I would come to class, I wouldn't talk, I'd be quiet, I'd stand straight in line, I'd keep my head to my side, I'd walk like this, because I wanted to blow pop. And everybody who would do right all day, well, in a half a day for us, and right before we go home, we would get these blow pops. And boy, man, she would be giving everybody theirs, and boy, it'd come time for mine. And every day, there was a blow pop. I said, man, this lady must have Walmart kind of blow pop, because she has them every day. But here's the killer part. I went to Willowbrook. When I was in the 4th grade, Miss Littlejohn was still the kindergarten teacher. I would go back to her class as a 4th grader and still get, you guessed it, blow pop. She had an unlimited supply of blow pop. And I love Miss I see her in the store. She's an older lady now. And I would see her in the store at Walmart or something. Miss Littlejohn, boy, you still look at them big old chubby cheeks. I'm almost tempted to say that you got a blow pop, but I don't do it. Because I'm telling you, it was an endless supply. She had them to give. And that's the way God's grace is. Even though I wasn't in the kindergarten anymore, I could still go back and get me a blow pop. Even though that we're not sinners anymore, we saved by God's grace, we still get blow pops. Even if I didn't deserve it. Because when I was in the 4th grade, I wasn't the same little person. I didn't stand still. But she still gave me blow pops. God has an unlimited supply. The best part about this verse is that he's from his fullness, his superabundance of grace. We all receive grace. We all receive grace. I've said this before, but it's fitting for today. Grace is not exclusive. It's inclusive for a couple of reasons. People who know Jesus, who have accepted him as their Savior, who have confessed their sins, they get to experience grace. Saving grace, then everyday grace. People who have not yet given their lives to the Lord, people who are still sinful and live a life that's like David's life, they still experience grace. Because if they didn't, zap, pow, boom, lightning would get them. So it doesn't matter if you are saved, walking in God's favor, or if you are unsaved, looking for him, you still experience his grace. The difference is for us, the text says that we receive grace upon grace. In other words, I'm saved by his grace, but now my everyday life is filled with his grace blessing. He just gives me blessings and gives me blessings and gives me blessings and gives me blessings. It's like having a coat for the wintertime, but I got 17 coats and can get 10 more if I need them. That's grace upon grace, blessing upon blessing. He just keeps, and it's not exclusive, it's inclusive. All of us get to experience of God's grace. One more picture. Come stand beside me. Come here, Ron Jr. Come here. Come here, Pete. Everybody grab hands. Everybody hold. Hurry, children, hurry. Stand beside Pete, Julie. Tony, you can come here. Ashley, you can come here. Pam, you come here. Do I got an array of people? Deb, you come here. Okay, that's enough. Now, if you look at us, we represent all people. The ages go from young to older. Different races, different faces, different hairstyles, different clothes, different sins. We represent all. See, the reason why I'm excited about what God is doing is because, listen, sometimes clubs are exclusive. We can't get into all clubs.
That's right.
I could never get into a club that Ashton was in high school. She was on the 4-point honor roll. I never made a 4-point. I could never experience the benefits of Pete working at UPS. I don't work at UPS. I can never know what it's like to watch my son graduate from Guthrie. My son didn't go to Guthrie.
Right.
So if we was to be selective about the things that we experience, some of us would experience it.
That's right.
This little baby next to me can sing. I can't. So the reason why God said it's all of us receive his grace is because he didn't want nobody to be left out. Yeah. Now, how do you feel sitting there and we're standing up here? You don't get to experience God's grace, only us. How would that feel? Yeah. Has anybody, and this may not, they may not do this anymore, but when I was in school, they would only take a select group of people on field trips. Now everybody get to go. I wish I was around now. Let me give you a better example. When I was in school, everybody didn't get a participation trophy. Either you contributed and you did something, or you watched me get my award. But today, everybody gets a participation trophy. All you gotta do is be on the team. You ain't got, listen, I had a good friend of mine. I'll tell it. I had a good friend of mine. I remember my high school coach saying, and this is off the subject, but this is funny. I remember my high school coach saying I had to give him 10 tackles so he would register on the tackle. Because at the end of the year, you have, and so he was going through all the defensive stats, and he said, I couldn't find one play where he was in on the tackle, but I just gave him 10 to make so he wouldn't feel bad. A lot of times, that's the way God treats us. He just gives us grace so we won't feel bad. So he made it available for all of us. Ain't that wonderful? If he was separated by age, you can go sit down. You too young. You too young. Go sit down. Doria, go sit down. If he was separated by gender, I don't really like you women. Y'all go sit down. That leaves only 4. Now, it's still a pretty good variety of us up here. But I don't like anybody who lives in Edmond. Uh-oh, I got 2 eliminated. I'm talking about if God was selective with his grace. I don't like anybody whose name starts with Tony. You can go sit down. If I was the only one to experience God's grace, how pitiful would that be for you and you and you and you and you? We wouldn't experience God's grace. I wouldn't have favor upon favor upon favor because I'm not in the select group of people. So it's not exclusive, it's inclusive. Everybody gets to experience God's wonderful, unmerited, undeserved faith because I didn't deserve it. Does that make sense? So he says you get to experience unlimited grace upon grace upon grace, blessing upon blessing upon blessing. How many times have you just been caring about your everyday life and God smacked you down with a blessing and you say, oh my God? And it always seems to be exactly what you need when you need it. That's how God's works. That's grace. Gift upon gift upon gift. But watch this last part. Out of his fullness, we all receive it. What do we receive? We receive his grace, his unmerited favor. In other words, we are no different than David. We all receive his grace even though we don't deserve it. We are no different than David. We talked last week about, we all have sinned. We've all fallen short and missed the mark of God's perfect life. And that's called sin. That's missing the mark. Even though we don't deserve grace because of the sin stain that was on our life, we still experience grace. We're no different than David. So I want you to do me a favor. I'm going to prove it and then we'll be done. In your head, please, 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 please don't answer these questions out loud because I may not be able to handle the truth about your life. If you have ever looked at somebody and lusted, put a check mark by that. If you have ever stole anything, put a check mark by that. If you've ever fornicated, put a check mark by that. If you've ever told a lie about anything, put a check mark by that. I said, do not raise your hand. If you've ever killed anybody, please don't tell me, but put a check mark by it. But here's the deal. If you put a check mark by one, you forfeit grace because you don't deserve it. See, here's what a lot of people think. A lot of people think, well, you know, Pastor, no, I ain't never killed nobody. I ain't never fornicated. I ain't never stole. I ain't never lied. I never lusted. If you are guilty of what the Bible teaches, the Old Testament law, if you're guilty of one, even if it was just a little bitty lie, just, even if you just look once. It doesn't matter what we've done. We're all guilty. And under the law, we all deserve death. In the old days, you know, the Bible days when they used to stone people, can you imagine being caught in a situation where you getting ready to be executed? You got some rocks. They're not playing. They got rocks in their hand and they got you up against the wall. And on the count of three, we giving you the business speech because you lied. Or what about this? If you steal something, we're going to cut your hand off. And you pull your hand out of your pocket looking like this, we know you stole something. Or if you had the scarlet letter on your head, remember that? The scarlet letter? We know you did something.
That's right.
And I often think about this. What if God would let everybody see my mess? Good Lord have mercy. But here's the deal. I don't care, because if I see your mess, you got some stuff too. Because we're all guilty. None of us deserve God's favor. Nobody deserves God's favor. Even when we act right to get a blow pop. See, I was only acting right externally. In my heart, you ever heard the story about, I can't remember the kind of little Johnny, and the teacher said, sit down. And he went on, the story ends that he said, I may be sitting down on the outside, but on the inside, I'm standing up. That was me. I would act right on the outside because I wanted the blow pop. I wanted the reward. See, God can see beyond my actions. He knows the contents of my heart. And even on the contents of my heart, he'll say, you're disqualified for grace based on your own merit. But we never have to worry about our own merit because God's grace surpasses your effort. And I know somebody will say, well, does that give me the license to go out and just do what I want to do? God forbid. That's what Paul said. No. We want to do right because we've experienced God's grace. I want to be better because I've experienced God's grace. I want to treat people right because I know what it feels like to be treated wrong, and I will experience God's grace. So I want you to experience too. We want to do better because we've experienced God's grace. Because none of us deserve it. So Jesus, he said, I'll go and I'll be the grace giver because I have an unlimited supply and I have enough for everybody, even if Pete doesn't deserve it. That is amazing. That's amazing. So this week, as we think about God's amazing grace, if you happen to find yourself doing something you know you shouldn't do, just smile and confess and say, Lord, I thank you for your grace. Then quit doing what you was doing. Does that make sense? Remember, God has a blow pop waiting for all of us, and it's called the crown of life. Amen. That's enough for today. Father, we thank you.